second edition of
Oh, hold on one second,
All
Deborah.
right, and I
We're
should
good
say
now. We're live.
second
We're
anyway.
live now. Yeah, exactly. Sorry. Go ahead now. We're live now.
Well, the little green light had said live on mine.
Oh,
That's why I started.
that's funny. Go ahead then. I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so welcome to Human Potential at Work. We are doing this on Facebook Live, and we're also going to take the recording and put it on the podcast. And I have my producer and voice consultant, Doug Foresta, with me today. So, Doug, thank you for joining me and teaching me about Facebook Live.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you. I don't know if I'm teaching you or you're teaching me. So anyway,
we're
teaching
learning
each other,
together.
but I'm glad we're learning together. I'm glad to be here with you.
Yeah, it's really cool to do it by Facebook Live because we can still do it as a podcast and share it with anybody that's not live. But anybody that is sees that we're live can actually join and ask questions and participate in the conversation. So we're gonna, when we feel a little bit better about doing this, we'll do it at a certain time, and we'll make sure that everybody knows that that people know when we're doing it, so that if you have questions and you want to join the program, that you can. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so today, is Doug has put in the window, we're talking about aging and disabilities, which is a very important topic since there are so many people aging all over. Of course, we're all aging, but there are very large amounts of aging populations in countries all over the world. So I think it's a very important conversation.
Yeah, I agree, Deborah. I'm so glad that that we're talking about this, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I know you've got some data there that you're going to share, but certainly, of course, the baby boomers, right, are when I was in school, the term they use in social policy is the pig and the python. Is the baby boomers are the
yeah, and the millennials have actually gotten larger than the baby boomers now, which is very interesting. I know a lot about the topic because when you're dealing in the disability field, aging and our seniors, many people acquire disabilities as we live our lives. As I've said in other programs, only about 20% of people with disabilities are born with the disabilities, like Sarah, my daughter, that was born with trisomy 21. Most of the rest of us acquire disabilities as we live our lives. Once again, doesn't mean we're broken, doesn't mean we can't contribute, but it's just part of it. And some of the statistics, I was just looking it up just to refresh my memory this morning, but in the United States, there's 76.4 million baby boomers. And of course, there was 76.4 million baby boomers around from 1946 to 1964, but obviously some people died. But immigration has actually kept those numbers pretty steady. But I think something that's very important to remember, especially as brands, is that those baby boomers control $30 trillion of assets. So there's going to be, over the next 20 to 30 years, $30 trillion of assets changing hands, which is amazing to think of that much money. And that's just in the United States. So you look at population, Japan has the oldest amount of people, aging. But even here in the United States, by 2029, 20% of our population will be over 65. 20%.
That's an incredible number.
Yeah.
Do you know what the number is right now in Japan? I was aware that Japan has an aging population.
Oh yeah, it's a really big issue. I know that. I don't know that exact answer. I can look it up, but I do know that by 2050, 50% of their population will be over 65.
Wow!
Think of the ramifications of that. I know that in Australia, people are, they have an aging population issue too, and right now, 30% of the population isn't working. So that's 70%. Think of the burden that it puts on the people that can work. I mean, we really shouldn't put children to work, right? But at some point, people hopefully get to retire. And a lot of people in the United States, baby boomers, had to put off retiring because of the financial crisis that we had. And unfortunately, very sad, 55% of baby boomers they don't have the money to retire, and it's going
That's
to
right.
be a real major problem for our country, because our social services just can't handle that kind of pressure. And as we all know, our social
And what you're already seeing, Deborah, I mean, what you already see is when you go to McDonald's, when I was a kid, you go to McDonald's or a fast food restaurant, it was all kids,
right,
they were the ones that had those jobs. Now you go there and there are kids, but there are also many times, I don't know if you've had this experience, but many times you go to a fast food restaurant, or you go to Walmart, or you go to, other places, you see elders, you see older people that are working in those jobs that were traditionally children's jobs, right? Or teenage jobs, or summer jobs. And now there's people that are, they're working in those jobs because, like you said, they can't afford to retire.
I know. And I see it a lot in the grocery stores and
bagging, right?
Yeah, I see it. And so it's a problem. And then, of course, as we get older, I went to the eye doctor today, coincidentally, and I'm really blessed to have really good 20/20 vision. And even though I wear glasses, they're reading glasses, but I was informed today I'm going to real glasses, even though these are real glasses, but I'm actually going to prescription glasses because of my age. I still have 20/20, but my eyes have to work harder to have that. And,
Gotcha.
It's a silly thing when I compare it to like my husband's eyes or my daughter's eyes or some of my, coworkers or friends that have, are legally blind. But as we use these bodies and as we age, we acquire disabilities. And it's interesting. I know we've been talking a lot about brands, and I was working with a very large brand one time, and they were calling senior citizens laggers. Many of them were laggers because they were just doing it internally, but they were calling them laggers because they weren't downloading their apps and they weren't, using the technology. They were the ones that wanted to come in physically and, talk to a human being or call somebody. And these customers were struggling with the voice response systems, the voice, which I hate a lot of those.
I was going to say, I don't know if I'm a senior citizen, but I'm not a big fan. I'm always pressing the 0.
And I'm yelling at it. I was yelling at a computer yesterday. It's like, because they asked me so many questions and I just wanted to get to the representative, and I started yelling at my phone, representative. It's like, okay, Deborah, stop abusing the robots. But and I know my mother, who is 78, she just can't. She cannot do it. It just really confuses her. And so, but I think the answer is not for us to consider, for brands to consider population laggers. I think instead we have to do a better job at making sure that your customers have the information they need in whatever way they need it. And I'm not suggesting, go back to everybody's got to go into the bank, but I think we have to have more empathy for the way the different people are using technology, the way we're understanding technology. We have to understand the fears that some of the generations before me, I grew up with technology. My father was a technologist when nobody ever heard of technology.
I remember you mentioning that before,
Yeah, I remember us getting our first computer, and you turn it on and it's, black and it has nothing. And Commodore, I think Commodore,
Yeah, one of the Commodore,
And we got to play that game where we could bounce the ball from one side of the computer. Which was fun. But the reality is that there's so many issues that play with this. And one thing that I know that you and I talked about before we decided to do this episode was, are there any benefits to aging?
Right.
And as somebody that is a woman of a certain age, and my husband's older than I am, and we're, losing family members now as they're getting older, and we're walking some, interesting paths. And it seems like everybody around me are walking these paths too. But, some studies prove that, that as we age, we do get more resilient. Not everybody, but a lot of people that are older, they do get more resilient. And it's almost in a way because you have no choice. I mean, and I'll give you probably a dumb example, but I remember when I was a young girl and I had my first car, and the first time my car broke down, it was a little MG midget, and I took it into the mechanic and I started crying, and I'm like, my car's broken. Now it like fell apart. And the mechanic looked at me and he's like, yeah, that happens with cars sometimes. And
Right.
he really acted like it wasn't the end of the world that I was having car problems.
You're like, don't you understand?
Yeah. And I think about that sometimes because, I've lived a lot, gotten a lot under my belt. But one thing that I thought was very interesting, and I'm going to look at my notes, is there was a study done by Stanford University, and they found that cognitive abilities tied to emotion actually improve with age. The older we get, the researchers tell us, the more comfortable we are with positive emotions, and the more comfortable we are with emotions and that allow us to process the information. So I know that if we would take the time, let me say this differently. The one thing that I love, you can criticize us baby boomers a lot. We've done a lot of things wrong, but we have reinvented every single age that we've been at. And, we reinvented consumerism, and we maybe didn't do that in the right way. But at the same time, we've been, as a group, and I'm lumping everybody together, we've done a really good job at, really trying to balance the counterculture, really fighting for people's rights, civil rights, making sure that people are included, persecution. We've done a lot of those things, and a lot of the other generations have joined in those fights. And I have a lot of confidence in, the millennials, what the millennials are doing to say, no, I think there's room for all of us to be included and to focus on our abilities. But I think that you're going to find that once again, baby boomers are going to, and are already doing it, they're going to reinvent retirement. They're going to reinvent, what does it mean to be old? And I was watching, Doug, I was telling you this, that I was watching a program the other day that I just absolutely love. It's on Netflix, Frankie and Grace. And if you haven't seen Frankie and Grace, it is so funny. You should.
I've not watched it. I'll have to, check it out.
It's my favorite. I love it so much that I only allow myself to watch one episode at a time, because you can sit there and binge watch them, but then you're done. But it's a story about two women that are in their 70s, and it's Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin, and they do a fabulous job. And they're talking about a lot of these issues that we're talking about right now. And on the episode I just watched, the Lily Tomlin character, she starts to grab something and she hurts her back, and then she's going down and she's like, I got to get to the floor. And she's lying down on the floor, and Jane Fonda goes to help her and she hurts her back. So they're both lying on the floor.
Out, yeah.
And then they're, trying to make a meeting, and it's very funny. But at one point, Jane Fonda's character says, when I was a little girl about 9, I could climb to the top of a tree faster than any of the boys. And I would scurry up that tree and I'd look around, and I thought, I can do anything. And she said, and I know that I'm older. I know I am, but I still feel like that little girl. But as she's laying on the floor, with her back out, and they can't reach the phone or get any help, she starts, really, feeling so sad that maybe she's not that person anymore. And as I've gotten older, Doug, I do feel like the same person. I know how old I am, but I think that there are a lot of gifts of aging,
Yeah. And I think that, this generation, well, first of all, it's like, what's the dominant narrative about aging and disability? I mean, that it's not a good one, right? I mean,
no, it's not. It's very negative.
Not. Right. And it's like you said, it's you just get out of touch, and you just, become feeble, and you just wait to die.
Right.
You get housed in some nursing home somewhere, and you're useless, and you're a burden. You're no longer meaningful. And I think, we mentioned technology. I think a couple of things are going to redefine aging. I mean, I think one thing is that, especially keeping up with technology keeps you younger.
I agree.
And so we have, the boomers are much more, I mean, it's not a big deal now for my son, his grandfather, so his mom's dad does Lego robotics 3 times a week with him at school. And so, he helps the kids, he shows them coding, and he's 77 years old, and he's doing this stuff. And he knows coding. He knows he was an architect his whole life. He's been very involved in technology. So he can still, at 77, he can teach the kids things and they can teach him things, but it helps keep him young. I think you're going to see that technology also, in terms of the things that it will enable us to do. Self-driving cars will enable us to stay in our homes longer, right? Technology will give us more independence. It will redefine aging. And one of the things that we know about aging as well is that we used to think that it was inevitable that you would have decline, right? That we would have decline, that neurons couldn't regenerate. We now know that's not true. We know that neuroplasticity exists and that we can learn new things. We can be vital. We can love. We can create. We can have an impact. I mean, I don't know about you, Deborah, but I feel like I'd like to continue to do this stuff until I drop dead.
I agree.
Yeah. And hello, Michelle.
I was going to say, Michelle joined us. And hello, Michelle. Always love when you join the program. Very proud to be working with Michelle Van de Pas. So thank you, Michelle, for jumping in. Yes, I think so. As Michelle's saying, self-driverless cars. I also think other things, like focusing on aging in place, because more and more people do not want to, they don't want to go into nursing homes. They don't want to go into assisted, living facilities. They want to stay in their homes and they want to be independent. On that same show, the adult children of Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin, they went out and got them those little necklaces that you can push.
I fall in and I can't get up. Yeah.
And they had a blast with that. Let me tell you, every time Lily Tomlin's character is like me, she talks with her hands and she kept setting it off. And they're in this big meeting. Here comes the ambulance. So just having fun with these things. But, and as, you both said, Michelle and you, the driverless cars, it's going to help people remain more independent. It's going to help people like my daughter, Sarah, that, was born with trisomy 21. It'll give her options. And Michelle's noted she also loves that show. It's a powerful show. And you got to really appreciate the role that media has in trying to change our culture's thoughts on what does it mean to be aging? Is it, are we broken? Are we useless? Can we not add any value? I disagree with all of those. And is it because maybe I'm getting older now? And how do we embrace that? And how do we embrace the disabilities that come along with aging? And not that we're like the characters that we're mentioning on Frankie and Grace, maybe their backs are, a little bit more prone. To go out. Maybe we don't hear as well. I know that my husband, I really believe he's now at the point where he needs a hearing aid, and I'm not just saying it as a nagging wife. He, we'll be in his situation, and I'll hear something, and he will not hear it. So, and his father was deaf. He passed away in January, but his father was deaf, and his younger brother's already gotten hearing aids. So it's something that runs in his family. So, and I'll tell you, a big problem that happens to people that age and acquire disabilities is that if you're born with a disability like my daughter was, or other people, we actually as a society, we're good at trying to educate you. If you're born blind, we'll teach you Braille. There's things that we'll do. But if you have a stroke and you become blind,
good luck.
You just don't get you don't get support. And I remember when my father-in-law went deaf, all of a sudden he got very isolated and socially isolated. And he lived in Florida, and we're in Virginia and New York, and I just really, nothing like walking the path to wake up and say, we really need to make sure, and technology will help it, but as we age and we acquire disabilities, that we have the training, the support, the technology that we need to remain independent and viable.
Right.
And we need to celebrate the wisdom of aging too. I know that some of the indigenous populations.
You read my mind. That's exactly
Yeah.
where I was going to go next. I was going to talk
Yeah.
about the wisdom of aging. Yep.
Yeah, because you meet a woman, in the grocery store, and she's elderly, and sometimes I will look at her and just want to sit down and hear her story, because we all have stories. So, Michelle, thank you for joining us on Facebook Live.
Thank you, Michelle.
And, and what we'll do is, we're moving forward and we get better at this, is, we'll take your questions and stuff, and we'll do like we're doing with Michelle. We'll pull you into the conversation. But I think, once again, as the baby boomers reinvent, what does it mean to age? And I want to say one more thing, Doug. As a woman, there was a saying for a long time that was that I always found ridiculous, and that the new 40 was the new 20. And I thought, why would we do that? And
I know
it seemed insulting to the 20-year-olds, but also, I don't want to be 20-year-old. I don't want to be 20 years old. 20s were sort of.
I teach 20-year-olds. I don't want to be a 20-year-old.
Very confusing. It was very confusing for me.
Yeah, it's a hard time.
Yeah, Sarah, my daughter, celebrated her 30th birthday yesterday, and she said, "I can't believe I'm 30." Yeah, and I said, 30s are great.
I was like, 30 is nothing. You're a young lady.
It's a great age.
It's your best dad.
I said, enjoy your 30s. And I said, your 40s are going to be better, and 50s. But I think we have to stop alienating aging and deciding that we can't have wisdom and gifts to offer if we're a person with a disability, or we're a person that has aged into a disability, or any other thing. If we love, looking at it from all the different diversity groups. If you are a different religious, if you believe in different religious things than somebody else. So I think we have to, I love the comment you put up there, shifting the narrative. It's very important that we continue to shift the narrative on aging and disability.
I think so. I think that, and that idea of wisdom, and really that we, could we really come to value wisdom? In many cultures, elders are revered, and in the United States, we tend to have a youth-oriented culture. Right. And it's good to see shows like what you're talking about, because that's the kind of thing that's going to change that narrative, is when we see possibilities, especially, I think particularly in our culture, women are not allowed to age. You just hide them. I saw, a thing about Demi Moore, and it's like, look how old Demi Moore's gotten. It's like, we all get old. I mean, that's
right.
She's like 51 years old. Like, it's ridiculous. Look how old she got. She's 51. Oh my God. How did that happen? Well, first she was 40, then she was 41, etc. Right. So, we definitely, in our culture, you don't see actresses who are young and attractive, and then all of a sudden, the men, of course, can be, they're handsome forever, but the women you just never see again. They just disappear.
I know, it's sad.
And you never see them. And it's like, the message is clear, that if you're a woman over a certain age, you should be invisible, because, nobody wants to see you anymore because you're just washed up. And I mean, I think brands can have a big part to play in that. And like you said, they have, there's a lot of money and a lot of consumer income that is tied up in this age group, and so it's not like it's an act of charity to engage this group. It's actually in brands' own interest to do so,
and to do it in a real empowering way. Because I know I keep going back to the Frankie and Grace and Frankie show, but they were talking about, they have a product, and I won't talk about that, but they have a product, and they went to an advertising agency, and they took, now these two women I think are gorgeous women. They're beautiful, they're funny, they're entertaining, they're very well-rounded, amazing characters. Sure. And to me, what the real word beauty means, which is there's a lot of substance to these women. And what the advertisers did was they took away all their wrinkles. They made them really young, and they looked at the pictures And they were both like, okay, I look amazing, but that's not what I look like. And we are selling a product to women our age, and we don't want to be inauthentic because this is who we are, and we're proud of who we are. I noticed the wrinkles on my neck. I've earned every one of the wrinkles that I have. And, I color my hair because I actually, like this hair color better than my natural hair color. But I think that's okay. But I think, like you said, women disappear. They become invisible because they're over a certain age in our media. And we really have to stop. We have to stop doing that. We have to stop doing that to women. We have to stop doing it to everybody. We have to stop assuming that people are less than because, they have a disability or they've aged into a disability or they're different from,
So the exciting thing is that this is a really good time actually to be aging. And if you're going to develop a disability because of all the accessibility efforts that you've done over the years, Deborah, and others in the space, you have a really good chance of not being completely, being able to participate still. Even if you become disabled, there's still a lot of things you can do to participate in society and to participate in meaningful work, meaningful relationships. I mean, isn't that at the end of the day what it's about? We want to have meaningful relationships. We want to contribute. Even if we don't have to work for money anymore, we're retired, we still want to have meaningful work. And we don't address that either. Like we never talked about what are people going to do after they retire? Right. What's your purpose? Is your purpose to just collect your pension for another 20 years?
Right. And, some people that we were talking about earlier that maybe they're they're working at the grocery store or they're working at McDonald's. They might be doing it partially for socialization.
That's right. Exactly.
Because I've talked to, some of them and they've said, well, it just got to the point where I, was getting out to go to the grocery store or maybe to go to church, but I just, even my father-in-law had said, all my friends are dying. Yeah. So, you do want to continue to be you do want to be viable. We all want to be viable. And the thing I love about it is that you can do amazing things working at, a fast food restaurant. I mean, you can make somebody's day just by smiling at them and talking to them and engaging with them. So blooming where you're
very purposeful. It can be very purposeful. It's like what Michelle always says, Michelle Vanipass, you can't not live your purpose. So you're absolutely right. I don't want to make it sound like it's this horrible thing that's, if you see an elderly person, greeting you at Walmart or something, that's not a bad thing. They may very well want to be there because it's something that they enjoy doing. It brings them pleasure. They help other people, they make a few dollars. So absolutely, it's not. And I think the idea that it's really challenging the narrative that, that with aging or with disability, you're not able to live a purposeful, productive life. And that's just simply not true.
I agree. And I do think, the realities are, what we talked about before, that once again, 55% of baby boomers they're not financially able to retire. It's a huge crisis. Yeah. And it is going to impact us, but, us taking the time to always remember that, to honor each other, no matter what age we are, regardless of whether we have a disability or not. I think using technology in a responsible way to make all of our lives better, continuing to fight for those that, maybe, are being persecuted, just really, as once again, using Michelle's comments, leading a purposeful life, I think is very important. So, Doug, thank you. Thank you for the conversation today. We're going to have more conversations about aging and disability. And I just think it's a very powerful topic, and it's certainly one that's very in my face these days. So I'm walking it a lot.
Most definitely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Really enjoying the Facebook Lives. It's a great I think these are fun, and yeah, we'll be adding people in as we as we
Yes,
get more comfortable with it.
yeah, I think it's such a powerful tool, and I really applaud Facebook for making this available to us.
Definitely.
And I know that they really want people to use it, and I think it's just another way that we can engage with each other, and we can share this. I've mentioned this before, but we have a Facebook group called Human Potential at Work, and it's open for everybody, and we would love for you to come and engage with us and, join the conversations and really continue to change people's minds about what it means to be human, which includes aging and disabilities and all the different diversity that makes us a really amazing species.
Amen.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you. Thanks, Deborah. Should be.